I'm Nikki Chambers. I'm the project manager for one of the project managers here in the OGTC, the Small Pools Solutions Centre. I've got a couple of colleagues from the Small Pools here, Chris at the back, and where's Charlie? Charlie's here. Yeah. So.
Okay, and what are you going to talk to us about today?
We're going to talk about our next Small Pools Call for Ideas. It's something that we've been looking at. It supports a number of our work themes that quite a few of you in this audience are already aware of. But this is going to be a call that comes out next week, so we thought this was a good opportunity to tell you a little bit about it.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Nikki. Your 20 minutes start now.
Thanks. Okay. I know some of you have already seen this. This is a software called Sharp Cloud, and we use this actually to tell our story. This is the Small Pools story. This is just a part of it, and it's a good tool for actually showing how things are linked up. So I'm going to use this to tell you where the call comes from and what particular themes we're looking at. So I'll start off with, this means I get my steps up as well for the day. Sorry? Yeah. So in terms of the Small Pools strategies, these are our main areas that we're looking at the moment. So we have a number of different work themes. So facility of the future and tieback of the future I'll touch on today. We're looking at energy integration, subsurface reservoir and hydrocarbon processing. But you can see at the bottom, automation, remote operations, circular economy is a key part of what we're doing, and digital and data. And as you'll notice from the right-hand side, we're working with Scottish Enterprise as well. We've got something on the subsea 2030 here. And WorldMac have been looking at some of the work that we've been doing on tieback of the future to look at the economic value of the tiebacks. So, what's this about? So we've called it Smart Seas. It is Smart Communications Subsea. And what we're going to talk about is really, I'll give you an idea of the tieback of the future and the facility of the future, and go into that in a little bit of detail and why this call is important to us. But the call itself is going to be about the subsea Internet of Things and an all-electric subsea future. I will touch on what the call for ideas actually is and the process for it. And this is something I would like to get onto, but it's only 20 minutes. So all of this feeds into our energy integration piece, the subsea 2030 vision from Scottish Enterprise, and the decarbonisation piece. But I'm not going to have a chance to touch on that today. So why is it important? More steps. Right, so our Tieback of the Future initiative, we started this probably this time last year, and this really shows you how it connects to all of our other work themes. And where we're at with this, we've presented it a couple of times, but this is a key part of delivering these small pools. We're looking at small pools that are reasonably short field life, probably 5 years maximum. So we've got to find a way to make them economic. If I'm standing in front of the screen, someone shout me. So we've worked up a number of themes. You can see from this slide just how many companies have been involved to date. We've still got a number of proposals and projects that are going through that support the tieback of the future, and we've just set up a delivery group that is actually looking at this and how we can make this happen. So the key part of it is about the circular economy. We're looking at designing for disassembly, designing for reuse. Because these pools are short field life, it means that they may be operating for 5 years. We've got to find a way of actually reusing this equipment to make it actually economic. So these key themes we're looking at, one of the real points that we need is the reusable pipelines, reusable control systems, and then the remove, refurbish and reuse. So we need to find a way that we can do that to make this circular economy piece work. And what you'll see is we've done all of the economics on this. And actually here you can see that 30% of the subsea capex we can save from actually reusing equipment. So we need to find a way that we can do that. Now, some of the issues with that are obviously about people taking the equipment if it's already been used. What does that mean in terms of what they're getting for their second use? So the call is part of this. So, where's Smart Seas there? The other piece we're looking at is facility of the future. Now, the tieback is obviously focused a lot more on the subsea side of things, but here we're looking at the facility itself, so it's a little bit more topsides focus. This is something that we're just kicking off at the moment, but we've pulled together a group of operators and industries, companies that are going to look at this. So we're going to be looking at a NUI, and actually NUIs are normally used for they tend to be shallower water gas fields, but what we're saying is why can't we use these for small pools? So we're going to look at stretching the envelope so that they're not water depth dependent, they're suitable for oil, and then what we're also doing is looking at remote control and automation and the technologies that we need to make these NUIs function. We're looking at expanding the processing facilities, so look at some of the technologies there and using some of the technologies that are existing, but how we can apply them to these NUIs. As I said, removing the water depth limitations, and then looking at the minimal manning requirements and what does that actually mean to each company. So as I said, we've got a study kicking off very shortly that's looking at this. And what we're going to do is work with the industry to find out how we can actually apply this. But again, with this, we're talking about, because it's small pools, we're talking about short life. So we need to put the facility on the field and then be able to reuse it again somewhere else. That was a bit too vicious, that one. So this brings us back to what we're looking for. So you can see with tieback of the future and facility of the future, there is some key areas that we're looking at that we need to address. So part of it is about the reuse. So that comes down to some of the asset integrity issues and how we can actually monitor subsea and topsides, what's happening, how we can maybe optimize some of the operations, that side of things. So what we're also looking at is we want to find ways to be able to do that. So we're starting to look at the subsea Internet of Things and also all-electric subsea future. Now, I'm sure everyone in this room has heard of Internet of Things, but just in case, I'm going to run a little. It's only a minute and a half.
We are about to wake up to a new world. The world of the Internet of Things. Don't worry, it just means that objects will be able to speak to each other. They'll do our work for us and look after us. Now, isn't that a nice thought? They'll be able to react to our movements. They'll understand when we want some peace and quiet, or when we want to get information and news, or just have a nice breakfast. In fact, the Internet of Things already exists. Many everyday objects are already part of it, some a bit too much. Intelligent objects will improve our interaction with the environment and our work. And as they're intelligent, why not have them do some work on our behalf? So we can concentrate on what we enjoy. Meanwhile, the objects will collect data and take care of us. And that's not all. The Internet of Things will help us save money. Do the shopping. Avoid lines. All lines. Step by step, the Internet of Things is on its way. We're working on it at this very moment. How about you? Are you ready to wake up to a new world?
Right. Again, you've probably seen some similar videos to this. So we live in a world where that's happening. Day to day, we're living in somewhere where everything is connected. So what we want to do now is to have a look at that and how that works subsea, how that works offshore. It's been slower to take off. This little diagram, which is wireless for subsea, I think, shows quite well what we're looking at. We need to be able to connect the subsea and offshore to make sure that everything is talking. What we do know is there's no one solution. It's much like small pools. There is no one solution to this. It's going to be a combination of different ways of doing it. So it's probably going to be radio, optical, acoustic, a bit of hard wire as well. But it may be it's probably going to most likely to be a hybrid of that. It's much like the tieback of the future and the facility of the future is going to be taking little pieces and fitting them together, how best works, how we can be able to cut the costs. So there are technologies out there. One of the things that with small pools, because we've got a shorter field life, it means that if we're looking at anything that has batteries, we don't have to go for the 20-year batteries anymore. It's something that we're looking 5 years, probably maximum 3 to 5 years in general. So this is part of our call, and one of the things that we're looking at is this subsea Internet of Things and how that can help us really with the tieback of the future and the facility of the future in mind. What we also are looking for is this all-electric subsea future. We know that there's technologies out there. Total have recently, it was last year, installed the first electric subsea tree in the Dutch sector. And this one here with Statoil, it's actually looking at a compression station. So the technologies are there. What it requires is a change in mindset, really, to be able to go to this all-electric future. But what it gains us is it means that we can drop some of we can either get rid of the umbilical completely or we can reduce umbilical size. It means that we have possibly better reliability and availability with the electric trees or electric functions. And there is an environmental thing. There's no risk of losing hydraulic fluid to the environment. So the technologies are there. There are a number of companies that are already working on it, but we want to know how we can incorporate that into our tieback of the future or facility of the future. So in terms of our call process, this is going out next week. You'll be able to register your name on the portal. And then you submit your theme. Some of you have probably already submitted to our other calls from different solution centres. And we have a set process which ends up in a dragon's den. And there's certainly people in here that have been a part of that, so that we then have a dragon's den to decide which ones that we take forward. So it's actually taking the industry with us to help us choose which ones are they're really interested in. Now, just to I suppose prove the point to a certain extent of how important this is, I'm going to go hopefully to the big screen. This is what I showed you earlier, so it's just the small part of it. This is our full map. So this is what is going to help us. This is just small pools. So we're looking here at all these different companies and organisations that are supporting us, all these different work themes. So if I press on Tieback of the Future, this is really what's feeding into Tieback of the Future. You can see how many we're trying to look at. So this is our process, and there's many different things that feed into this Tieback of the Future. Same with Facility of the Future as well. It's a similar, there's lots of overlapping. So it was really just to make you aware. Hang on, I'm going to find for Smart Seas again. There it is. Go through. So yeah, what we're looking for is for your input really for this call. Any ideas that are really around Tieback of the Future, Facilities of the Future, where subsea Internet of Things or the electrification or the all electric subsea could be used. The particular areas are obviously asset integrity, particularly for remote operation, and how we can really reduce the umbilical size. So yeah, what I was going to do was, this was something that we found when we were looking for things. Other industries have already gone down this route. So car industry is always a good one for taking how they've looked at this. And it's hydraulic steering versus electric steering. And again, it's been a change of mindset that they've had. And we were discussing it the other day, and how, I'm going to ask Charlie this one, was it the Porsche 911? Yeah. And when they originally introduced the electric steering, everyone was up in arms about it being not responsive. But you can see how much that's changed. I mean, this is from 2005 to 2011, so it's only in 6 years. And we've gone from 26% electric to 58%, and I'm sure that figure is now much greater. So other industries have done it. It's all been about a change of mindset. We've got to go down that same route. So I will leave you just with that. 3 minutes to spare. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Nikki. So just to get started on our Q&A, so who would like to start with a question for Nikki, please? Don't all rush at once. This is a first.
Woohoo.
You must have been crystal clear, Nikki.
I must have been. Or they're so just, what?
How about this gentleman here?
Just a simple question. If it opens next week, when is it going to close?
It's 6 weeks that it's open.
Short and sweet.
Yeah.
How about our next question? How about any from the team here? Anybody needing clarity?
That was the thing that I'm not meant to do.
Our own Chris Pearson, what have you got for us?
Thank you. Should I introduce myself, Nikki?
Yes, please.
All right, Christopher Pearson. Yeah, a quick question. I guess the interesting part from my point of view is why, you know, when the sort of Internet of Things concept came out onshore, if you want to think of it like that, there's a lot of commercial benefits have come to the fore since originating the Internet of Things. Mm-hmm. So I guess, what would you see as the available benefits to the industry if we go to an all-electric subsea, if we go to a highly connected subsea infrastructure, and how do you see that changing the way that we work? Because many people offshore, less people offshore, etc. I guess there's a few questions in there. Take your pick.
Well, the all-electric one is something that we can is an easy one to answer. So if we can go all-electric, we eliminate umbilicals, which obviously saves on capex, or we can at least reduce the size of umbilicals because we'll have to find another way to get the chemicals. It also means that we've got less topsides equipment. There's, as I said, the environmental risk with the hydraulics being there. there's a number of things that we the other ones are longer step outs as well. It allows us for longer step outs. So that's the all electric one. For the subsea Internet of Things, it does mean that we're going to be able to see for tieback of the future. We have a pipe that we put on the seabed. It's there for 5 years now. At the moment, what we'd do is we sort of know what's in it, but we don't know exactly. So if we can find a way for actually monitoring what's going through that, the fatigue, the temperatures, the pressures, whatever it is that we need to monitor through the life, it means that as and when such time that that pipe is recovered, the next development will know exactly how it's behaved, what's happened to it. It's sort of like I suppose it's a service certificate nearly for the pipe itself. So that gets over one of the issues that we find is in this whole reuse piece. It's people saying, "Well, what if I'm second? How do I know what's happened if I know that it's operated outside its design envelope? What can I do to actually be able to prove that?" So if we can find a way of actually monitoring that and monitoring real time what's going through there, it means that obviously we have this record, but it could mean that we can actually do sort of like real time changes to operation, to optimization. There's all sorts of things that it brings us, this total communication that we have. We do already look at running a lot of operations from onshore rather than offshore, and that's growing. When we were at Subsea Expo, we had Premier along who presented a number of cases like that, and that means that we can remove some of the manning from the facilities themselves, reduce costs. Obviously, it's a safety improvement in safety. So there's lots of things this new technology could bring us. It's just finding ways of getting it all connected together. So does that answer all of them, or just? Okay.
Okay, another question here at the front, Lauren. If you can just wait for the mic so we'll capture it.
Hi, it's Graham Whitehead. Just to provide a bit of context, you've run some other calls before. So
Yep.
what are the factors that make a good submission, and what do you look for? What's the time scale of the ask? Is it you're not going to solve world hunger, but what are you looking for?
We've had from I suppose the small pools side, we had a plug and play call that was last year, and we had a wide variety of ideas came through from academic through to things that the technology exists already, and we filtered them out. We put them to the Dragon's Den. It was quite interesting. Different sides of Dragon's Den had different opinions. So it's right across the board. It's sort of like it is technologies that are nearly there. There is one that we're supporting that is something probably it's a future. So it's really all levels we're looking at.
Okay, next question, please. Roger.
Hello, Roger Esson, OGTC. Nikki, I'm just interested to know whether in the discussions you've been having with some of the operators just now about the reuse part of it with small pools, are you getting any real commitment that if it's designed for reuse now that people will actually reuse things going forward?
It's part of the reason that we've actually set up the delivery group, is to discuss that in a little bit more detail and how we can make that make them more comfortable with that idea. I think everyone sees the economic side and why we need to make it work, but it's just how we get there is the issue. So they're committed to sitting in this delivery group and just trying to find a way forward with that. So they do recognise it. Obviously, they won't commit as yet, but nearly there.
Thank you, Nikki. Any other? Oh, Charlie.
Charlie Booth, OGTC. So you mentioned up on there about the subsea 2030, so the integration with Scottish Enterprise. What kind of parts does that cover, and how does that fit into this?
No, I was going to cover this, and then I don't know whether anyone was at Subsea Expo, but Steve Harrison did a really good 2030 presentation that sort of just, it was about how we can use the subsea knowledge and the subsea really for new things for 2030. Go and find it. Do you remember where it is? So, yeah. But it was about using the seabed it was mineral mining. It was about actually living on the seabed. And the one that probably stuck in most people's heads was the subsea pork. So it was about actually using the seabed for growing food, actually, in the future. It's well worth having a look at it. It's really interesting, and it sort of broadens the thought process a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, it's all about how we can, I suppose, expand the subsea world, really, and just get it interconnected and use it for our own good. Okay.
Okay, so this lady here.
Hi, Caroline Roberts, Haritonov from Astromar. Kind of leaving the subsea pork aside a minute, going back to the reuse, what sort of equipment are you looking at reusing? Is it everything, or are you focusing in on specific equipment types?
We're looking at reusable pipelines, but we're looking at reusable control systems. If you look on our website, there's a link to the Tie Back of the Future and the presentations at both Subsea Expo, and then we did a joint technology day with the OGA, so it goes into a lot more detail, but it's all aspects of it. So it's the thing with the pipelines, it's probably if we can find a way to just pick them up and use them again, so that will involve not trenching, not burying, and cover them with mattresses. So we need to find a way. We're talking to the fishermen about that and how we can achieve that. But it's all parts of the system. We're looking for a way that we can install a subsea field that will be interconnectable and will be reusable, so that we can lift it up and take it on to the next development. But it's everything from manifolds, trees, pipelines, control systems, whichever. So.
Okay, Brian, did I see you with your hand up earlier? Lauren, just make your way to Brian.
Thanks. Nikki, you mentioned earlier on about design for decommissioning. Mm-hmm. Can you share with us just a little bit about what's happening in that space?
It's about the design for reuse piece. So it's about designing to be able to lift it back up and move it on to the next field. So because we're short field life, we're only 5 years, everything we design is normally 20 years plus design life, so we need to make reuse of that. So in the design, generally, we're looking at, right now, it's designed to be put on the seabed and then left there for the 20 years and then removed. But if we can look at it at this early stage, it means that we take into account what that will take to lift it back up and move it on. It's also then about the refurbishment side of it. So we're designing for this, if it's, say, a pipeline, for instance, how we can refurbish that and move it on again. So it's just, if we can look at it this early, then that's something that we can build in.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Okay, I think we're almost down to the last few. Anybody got any more questions? Maybe time for one more? Oh, here we go.
Hi, I'm Sabine Brochard from Total West of Shetland Development. So just for the reuse, I think that Christmas trees are quite almost standard reuse now,
Yes.
subsea.
Yeah.
For the investment fund, I would like to know what's the amount of the total investment you're having for this small pool. And second question was, you showed, I think it's Osgard, subsea compression. So do you have any work ongoing or subject with all-electric subsea compression?
Okay, I'll answer the last question first. So the subsea compression, it's not something that we've touched on as yet. It probably fits into one of our work themes, but as yet we've not looked at it. In terms of the fund, do you mean for the call itself, or do you mean for? I'm looking at Chris here behind you, so $500,000. Yeah.
The first call that we did was for £1 million, and I think what we'd like to do now is broaden the reach. So maybe have a smaller amount of money per call, but then increase the frequency of calls. And I may have just revealed to the rest of the team that we're going to have another call later on this year, which I apologise in advance.
Can I just check? Can everyone hear Chris? Because I noticed he didn't have a mic there. Does anyone? Wave your hands if you want him to repeat that. No? You're safe.
Yeah. Okay.
Clearly you shout loud enough, Chris. We're good. Yeah? And I think we had a question at the back as well, didn't we?
Hi, Mark Banks, Infinity. Nikki, just a quick question to do with potential collaboration with the renewables industry. It appears that this particular call will have a lot of opportunity to tap into some of their lessons learned, and if there's any current link into that area. From the OGTC.
Chris is sitting next to you, nodding his head there.
Without a microphone, I can nod quite well. Yeah, obviously, Nikki, you can take that one if you wish.
Yes, you can.
No, okay,
You've got the microphone now.
Thank you. So we are integrating. We've already done some gas to wire looking at gas to wire. Martin Tulloch is sitting in the back row just in front of me here. Martin also presented at Subsea Expo how we can integrate offshore marine renewables, specifically floating wind and fixed wind, into power generation. If there is a future that talks to an all-electric subsea, then how we power it becomes quite an interesting question, and looking at smart grids and then distributed power networks. ECOG are also in the room. The ECOG are one of our first projects looking at distributed power generation for currently suspended wells, but then also future greenfield wells. So we see it as a huge interface, and anybody who wishes to put a section of the call or an idea in that covers that, very interested in. Mm-hmm. That doesn't give anyone prior approval of success, just for clarity on that one. Cheers.
Okay, any last questions before we finish up? Okay, I think that's us for today, Nikki.
Right.
So I could ask you just to show your thanks for Nikki, please.